I stood in the empty house looking around. My sister Susan and her husband had kicked me out. "We're moving in, so you need to leave," she said. After taking care of our sick father for years, I was being thrown out like a stranger. But I had one last thing to do. "Fine," I said, "but I'm taking everything I bought." They laughed, thinking I was joking. They didn't realize I meant everything: the furniture, the appliances, even the car. I was finally leaving, but I wouldn't go empty-handed. "My name is Kate. I was never my parents' favorite. That was Susan. She was beautiful, talented, and played the piano. Our parents loved her and gave her everything she wanted. I was just there. Not ugly, not bad at school, but nothing special. My parents often said, 'As long as we have Susan, our family is complete.' It hurt, but I got used to it. I studied hard, hoping they would notice me. They never did. I slowly realized, if I wanted happiness, I had to find it myself. I tried my best to impress my parents. I worked hard in school, hoping they would be proud. But when Susan won a beauty contest in college, they threw a party. When I got into a top high school, they barely noticed. 'Why can't you be more like Susan?' my mother would say. Susan, on the other hand, made fun of me. 'You're so plain,' she'd laugh. 'Are we even related?' I stopped hoping for their approval. Instead, I buried myself in my studies and dreamed of the day I could be free. Susan got everything she wanted: new clothes, new phones, the latest gadgets. I got her old stuff. If I asked for something new, my parents always said, 'We can't afford it right now.' But somehow, there was always money for Susan's things. At school, my friends talked about how much their parents loved them. I had nothing to share. I felt like an outsider in my own home. Over time, I stopped asking for anything. It was easier that way. I studied hard and got into a great university. I thought, maybe this time, my parents would be proud. Instead, my father said, "Why go to an expensive school? We need that money for Susan." My mother agreed. Susan was taking an extra year in college, and they needed to support her. I was shocked, but I wasn't about to let them stop me. I found a university that gave me a scholarship and worked part-time. I learned a hard lesson. If I wanted something, I had to fight for it alone. After college, I wanted to move out, but my parents wouldn't let me. "You haven't paid us back for your education," they said. Meanwhile, Susan lived in her own apartment, fully paid for by them. I was angry, but I stayed quiet. I saved every penny I could. I worked hard and got promoted quickly at my job. I told myself, one day I'll leave and they won't be able to stop me. I just had to wait for the right time. When my mother passed away, my father and Susan were heartbroken. But I felt nothing. She had never loved me. So why should I cry for her? My father called me heartless, but I didn't care. My mother had always treated me like I didn't matter. Why should I pretend now? I went through the funeral like a stranger. Without my mother, I hoped things might change, but I knew better. Susan still had my father wrapped around her finger. I was still just an outsider in my own family. A year later, my father got sick. Suddenly, I was the one expected to take care of him. Susan, now married, refused. "I just started my new life. I can't take care of Dad," she said. So after working all day, I came home to take care of him. He never thanked me. Instead, he criticized everything I did. "You're too slow. Do it better." I clenched my teeth and did what I had to do. Not out of love, just to keep a roof over my head until I could leave. One evening, Susan and her husband arrived at the house looking serious. I could tell something was wrong. "We're moving in," Susan said without hesitation. "You need to leave." I blinked in shock. "What? Why?" My father, the man I had taken care of for so long, spoke next. "I feel like you've been staying here just to take our money," he said coldly. My heart pounded. After everything I had done for him, he still thought of me as a burden. But instead of crying, I felt calm. "Fine," I said, "but I'm taking everything I bought." I packed up everything: furniture, appliances, even the car in the driveway. My sister and her husband barely noticed as I moved my things. They probably thought I was just taking a few small items. But when they returned a few days later, Susan called me, her voice shaking. "Where's all the furniture, the appliances, the car?" she demanded. I smiled. "I took them," I said. "You told me I could take what I bought." She hesitated. "But Dad bought those with Mom's inheritance?" I laughed. There was no inheritance. I paid for everything with my own money. "You have to bring them back," Susan cried. "We can't live like this." For the first time, she sounded genuinely desperate. I took a deep breath, enjoying the moment. All her life, she had gotten everything handed to her. Now, she was helpless. "Sell your designer bags," I suggested, "or ask your husband." Her voice wavered. "His business is failing. We don't have money for new furniture." I shrugged. "Not my problem," I said, and hung up. I had spent my whole life being treated like I was nothing. Now, I was free, and they were the ones struggling. Susan tried calling again, but I blocked her number. I didn't give her my new address. If she showed up at my workplace, I'd call security. I was finally free from my family. A few weeks later, a relative told me Susan and her husband had sold the house and moved into a small apartment. Her husband, unable to handle the stress, eventually left her. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had never cared about me, so why should I care now? I had my own life to live, and I was happier than I had ever been. With her husband gone, Susan had no choice but to return to her old job in the nightlife industry. But things had changed. She wasn't young anymore. The job that once made her feel special now made her miserable. People talked behind her back, and soon she couldn't even keep a stable job. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I had a good job, a cozy apartment, and a future I built with my own hands. Susan had lost everything, and I felt no guilt. She had lived off others her whole life. Now, she had to survive on her own. One day, I heard from a distant relative that Susan was still struggling. She was now taking care of our father, who had become even more difficult. Money was tight, and she had no one to turn to. I wondered if she ever thought about the way she had treated me. Did she regret it? Maybe. But it didn't matter anymore. I had moved on. My life was peaceful now. My new apartment was small but comfortable. I had a cat that I adored, and I spent my days working and enjoying my freedom. For the first time, I felt truly content. Some nights I thought about my past. The childhood where I was ignored, the years of struggling to be seen, the betrayal from my own family. It was all behind me now. I had built a life for myself without their help. If my father or Susan ever needed me, I wouldn't answer. I owed them nothing. They had made their choices, just as I had made mine. And I had chosen peace. I smiled as I curled up on my couch, my cat purring beside me. My life was my own now, and I was finally happy. With my family out of my life, I finally felt free to dream. I wanted to travel, to experience new things, to maybe even fall in love. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what the future held. My past had shaped me, but it didn't control me anymore. I was stronger than the girl who had once begged for her parents' love. I had survived. No, I had won. And now I was ready to live. Not for them,